Welcome to the second session of our Chapter 1 discussion. Apologies, I was only able to upload the updated parang Macy Consulting over Sunday, pero I hope na it was able to give you a clear idea in terms of like what we want to do. So for me, in order for you to determine yung success natin for Chapter 1, there are two major things that you have to master. So number one would be definitely the theory. So ano ba yung mga fundamental frameworks, ano ba yung mga key concepts of BA 99.1 or specifically accounting. And then second, for this chapter, I really want us to be experts on accounting equation. So understanding why its asset is equal to liabilities plus equity. And then second is knowing the first level of going through the accounting process. So that would mean knowing the basic transaction analysis, the advanced transaction analysis, and then from there, creating our different financial statements. So in order to help with this or to help double check, just wanted to thank everyone for answering the exercises. So I think you have a rough idea naman in terms of like which items you found easy, which items took you a bit of a while in terms of solving. But like what I mentioned, the important thing is more than the answer, more than doing well in terms of the exercises. Dapat we master the way that we solve it, right? So today, what we're gonna be doing is undergoing a very framework-driven way to answer it. So you might have your own way, but if you're lost or parang confused, don't worry, we'll go through a step-by-step process in terms of answering this. But as promised, like in anything, give and take. So basically, what I'll do is I'll guide you, but at the same time, I'll also be asking for volunteers to do it on an exercise level. So basically, my two requests before we start. Number one, please get a copy of the worksheet or the problem set. And then second, please bring out an Excel or a yellow pad so you can re-answer it. I know it's a bit tedious, but then at the same time, let's just go through it together. So with that said, like what I mentioned, there are 6 learning objectives naman for chapter 1, right? So we're done now with the understanding of the business context. So I think by now we know what accounting is, we know what activities are part of accounting, and who are the users, both internal and external, right? And then we also are expected na we already know the building blocks. So now we're gonna focus on the second half. So the more technical, practical stuff. Na yun nga, like what I mentioned, the accounting equation, and then analyzing the business transactions. So with that said, let's now go to our exercise or problem set 1 breakdown. Just looking at our different accounting principles. So like what I mentioned, in solving during the exams, don't panic. There's always a framework to every problem. So in 99.1 or even all of my accounting classes, it didn't really come to me as intuitive as I would have liked. So parang usually, what I do to counter that is I answer a lot of exercises, and then instead of just answering it, I always come up with a framework based on a specific type of questions. So in terms of our problem set 1, you can actually look at the different question type and then the different frameworks that we can use to answer it. So we can go it one by one. So the first two is just really more about a fill in the blanks, basic accounting equations, just to double check if gets ba natin yung fundamental principle that assets is equal to liabilities and equity. And then as the exercises progress, mas pa-complex ng pa-complex yung level of understanding and level of mastery that is expected from us. So with that said, let's first go and review our accounting equation. So again, like what I've said, everything that you own or everything that you have is either built up by you or you got it from a third party. Therefore, assets on the left side should equal your liabilities and your equity on the right side. So it's like a balance. Like what I mentioned in basic transaction analysis, every economic event, you have to make sure na may balance tayo. So parang if may asset na tumaas, there are 3 things that can happen to maintain balance. Either may liability na tumaas, so nag-balance sila. May equity na tumaas, so nag-balance sila. Or if may asset na tumaas, kailangan may another asset na bumaba. Just so that you can maintain the equilibrium. So in anything, if you're lost and you need a check figure, You just have to double check. Are the assets equal to the sum of the liabilities and the equity? So with that said, yung simple accounting formula, therefore, would be assets is equal to your liabilities plus equity. But like what I've mentioned, in any equation, since we were able to pass naman, our math component, kailangan you'll be able to play around with the equation. So sometimes ang missing is asset, sometimes missing ang liability, sometimes equity, or sometimes two are missing pero merong isang guiding question. So let's not panic and we all go back to the one equation, which is assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. So with that said, let's go to our first exercise, which is basically from Wigant na modified na BE 1.1. So with this, wanted to ask if there's anyone who wants to answer the first exercise for this one. If not, I will call on someone. Sige. Justin. Hi, Justin. Good morning.
Morning, sir. Am I audible pa?
Yes, yes. Mm-mm. Okay.
Okay pa.
So, let's do it together. So, let's do it line by line na lang, Justin.
Okay pa.
So, for this, first is missing C equity. So, what do we need to do now? How do we get equity, Justin?
Okay. So, based po dun sa formula, we just minus asset sa liabilities po. So, 76,000 minus 42,000. The answer po is 34,000.
Okay. So, 34,000. Correct. Okay. So, now, very straightforward. But now, paano kung liabilities yung missing? What would be the thing that we need to do?
Just like the first question po, we just minus assets with equity. So, 124,000 minus 89,000, which is 35,000 po.
Okay. Correct. So, 35,000. And then, the third item, how would you go about solving this?
So for the third item naman po, we just add liabilities with equity po. So 69,000 plus 67,000 is 136,000 po.
Okay. Yeah. And then, basically parang same na lang. So, what are the other two and how did you solve it? So, yung fourth item would be, how do we get
Um,
the missing liabilities?
like yung sa second item po, we just minus assets with equity. So 210,000 minus 123,000 is 87,000 po.
Okay. And then finally, for equity, the last.
Ganun din po. Like parang sa first item lang. Minus yung assets with liability. So, 178,000 minus 166,000. The answer po is 12,000.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Justin. So, basically, that's BE 1.1, right? So, assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. There will be a lot of times na your assets and your liabilities will be missing. So, you have to go back to these very basic principles. So, thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciate it. So, before we proceed, are there any questions for 1.1 or wala na? Kindly thumbs up if everything's okay pa so far. Okay. Next. Now we have 1.3. So actually 1.1 is really more of a warm-up, right? So more of a warm-up siya. So now, these are the more typical questions na you can expect in terms of your quizzes and your long exams, right? So there could be variations, it could be more difficult. Pero ito yung medyo mas better way of gauging whether parang meron tayong grasp in terms of all the relationships. So today, for this particular exercise, we have two restaurants. The Original Birth of Chicagoland and the Bear Ltd. And then they have two different scenarios. So basically, when you look at this, parang it looks a bit intimidating. But the first thing you do is always go back to ano ba yung ask, right? So let's break it down per scenario. So let's first go to the first company, which is the Original Birth Chicagoland scenario 1. Maybe we can have another person. So tapos na si Justin. Asia, are you here?
Hello po.
Ayan. Sige. So, basically, let's go through it together. So I'll explain the framework and then I'll ask you na lang to help in terms of like what are the missing so that we can figure out the table. So for this, in terms of like questions like this, wherein meron kang change, meaning meron kang beginning and then meron kang ending, there will always be a reason for that particular change, right? So in order for us to do it, my suggestion is you create a table. May assets ka is equal to liabilities plus equity. Have another row that's merong beginning. So ano yung beginning niya? And then ano yung ending niya? And then track the changes in between. So first is what would be our liabilities in the beginning, Asia?
So ang ginawa ko po here is 1.5 million minus 677,000. And yung sagot po for total liabilities in the beginning is 823,000.
Okay. So basically parang same as BE 1.1. And then let's try to look for the ending assets. Parang how do we go about that one?
So we add the change, which is 250,000 to the 1.5 million total assets. So the ending assets would be 1.750.
Okay. 1.75 billion. Correct. And then what's our next step, do you think? Isha?
And then for the total equity naman, we subtract the change. So 677,000 minus 77,000 is 600,000.
Okay. And then lastly, ito na yung mahahanap natin yung question na tinatanong at the start. What is the liability at the end of the year? How do we solve for that?
We get this by subtracting the assets, the equity. So 1,750,000 minus 600,000. We get 1,150,000.
Okay. And then lastly, if you know the ending of the liability, what would be the change from beginning to end of the year?
It increased po by 327,000.
Okay. Yeah. So basically ganun lang. So parang if you get intimidated, thank you so much, Isha. So I'll keep you for the next scenario and then I'll call another person. So for birth scenario 1, basically kung parang hindi kayo ma-intimidate, think of it as BE 1.1. Pero first you figure out per row. So beginning and then yung ending and then finally ano ba yung missing pieces in the changes, right? So let's apply this and let's go through it together. So what would be your step 1, Isha, for this one? For the second.
We get the liabilities.
Okay. So basically the liabilities would be
Assets minus equity. So that would be 800, wait, yes, 823,000.
Yes, sorry. Okay. 823,000. So medyo same as the first one. Okay.
Yes.
And then what is the next thing that we need to get to complete the table?
We add the changes po. So sa liabilities muna, 823,000 minus 453,000.
Okay.
And you would get 270,000 po.
Okay.
Tapos for the equity naman, we add 677,000 plus 223,000 and you get 900,000 po.
Okay. And then because may nakuha na tayong ending, we'll be able to get
The assets.
yeah, the assets at the end, right? So the assets at the end would be what?
1,270,000.
Okay, so 1.27. And therefore the change would be an increase or a decrease from the beginning.
A decrease po by 230,000.
Okay. So basically 127 and then minus 15 is a decrease of 237. Thank you so much, Aisha. Yeah. So basically, ganun lang. So we have one framework, pero it works for all the different scenarios. So beginning, ending, and then you figure out the changes. Sige, let's try another example.
Sir?
Yes, may question, Luther. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Dun sa scenario 2 assets change po, 230K. Sa submission, may negative sign ba dapat, sir? Kasi mali po yung return sa akin.
Okay. Sige.
Sa review, 230K assets change sa scenario 2.
This one. Okay, sige. I'll double check the check figure.
Sige,
Thank you so
thank you,
much
sir.
for bringing it up, Luther. We'll double check. So rest assured, kung may mali sa check figure, across the board, I'll just award it to everyone. So parang plus for the effort. Yun. Apologies for this. We'll double check na lang in the meantime.
No problem, sir. Thank you.
And then at the end of this class, I'll also send you an Excel of the way I'll be able to solve it. Pero I get na parang it's kind of intimidating if you just look at it. But go through the recorded lecture if there's something na hindi kayo familiar with. Okay, got it. So next, let's finish BE 1.3 with the bear scenario. So let's get 2 scenarios. Maybe we can ask Trish. Trish, baka you can help us with the bear LTV.
Hi, sir, and everyone. Okay, so for this item, first you can get the assets at the beginning of the period. So that would be liabilities plus equity. So 4 million plus 1.85 million, that is 5.85
Okay.
million peso.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, sir. Afterwards, we can complete first yung sa liabilities. So that's 4 million minus 500,000. So 3.5 million. So that's the ending balance for the liabilities. And then for equity naman, 1.85 million plus 150,000. So that would be 2 million. And then after that, you can complete na yung ending balance of the assets. So liabilities plus equity again, 3.5 million plus 2 million is 5.5 million. And to get the change in assets, ending balance minus beginning, which would be 350,000 decrease.
Okay, perfect.
Next.
Correct. So, and then finally, let's finish the whole scenario. So, thank you. So we start with beginning, apply the changes, get the missing ending, and then finally get the last period change. So, finally, ito, how do we answer the last scenario for this? Yeah. Sorry, Tish, for yan. Yeah, let's finish the.
Alright, sir. For the other scenario, so the first question is beginning balance for equity. So that would be the assets minus liabilities. Oh wait, tama po ba, sir?
Sorry. Yung answers. Okay, so how did we get 1,850 by subtracting assets minus liability? Okay.
Yes, sir.
And then,
Alright.
how did we get the 600,000 na change? Yeah.
To get that po, you get the equity change of the ending balance minus beginning. So 1.25 million minus 1.85 million. So that's negative 600 or 600,000 decrease.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, nagkaroon lang ng order. So, thank you so much, Trish. So basically, the same thing that we've done. So we first get the equity at the beginning. So that's the first step. The second step is i-apply natin yung mga changes na binigay. So minus 350 naging 5.5 million, 4 million plus 204.25 million. With this, we'll be able to get the ending equity of 1.25 million. So 5.5 million minus 4.25 million. So 5.5 million minus 4.25 million is 1.25 million. And then you just subtract, so that's a decrease of 600,000. So there, so we're done.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sorry, sir, sa bare limited scenario po. ano po, I have a different interpretation kasi dun sa given, sir. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, sir. Dun kasi, sir, sa given at the end of year. So I did a reverse computation. So yung 400 million, so 4 million na liabilities and the total equity na 1,850, for me nilagay ko siya sa ending. Kasi sir, di ba, at nakalagay siya sa given at the end of year. Tapos I thought we were trying to get the starting figures from having the ending
That can't
position.
translate into the total
Sorry.
equity of 150 branding
Okay.
allegations are given at the end of
Okay, sorry.
Sorry.
So I think it's the other interpretation.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, I agree. So basically for this one, I think for this particular end of year nga yung potential interpretation. I think in some problem sets nakalagay beginning. So ang utang ko in the class is we'll do that interpretation using the end of year and then we'll solve again for that one. Yeah. Sige. So yun yung utang ko for the class. So we'll do end of year scenarios for this one. Sige.
Thank you, sir.
Sige. So 1.3 will do that. But basically it's the same principle. So whether kung beginning or end of the year, parang the way we solve it will be the same. Yeah. So now that we're done when it comes to the assets is equal to liabilities plus equity, the next step that we'll be doing would be in terms of expanding the equation. So basically for the first two exercises, I just really wanted you to master the assets plus equals to liabilities plus equity. So now we expand it, right? So equity is then further divided into two. Owner's capital, which is an addition, so additional investments, minus owner's drawings. And then basically yung owner's capital, you can further break it down into three. Owner's capital, meaning yung additional investment, the revenue, and then the expenses, right? So with that said, we'll be able to derive from the basic accounting equation, we'll have our expanded accounting equation. So with that said, we can now go to Ken, so basically Ken, Barbie, and Alan example of BE 1.4, wherein will break down that formula. So kanina, mas madali, assets plus liabilities equity. Now, let's add or let's look at the expanded equation. So ito yung master formula. Assets is equal to liabilities plus owner's capital minus owner's drawings plus revenue minus expenses, right? So with that said, the total assets of Ken Ltd are 92,000. So basically, step one, fill it up. 92,000. Owner's capital is 54. Drawings are 34,000. So 34, so negative palagi pag drawings. Revenue 73,000. And then expenses of 41,000. So may expenses rin tayo. So the first step is, ayaw natin na complicated. So let's bring it back to a framework that we're familiar with. Assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. So first step is look for your equity, right? So look for your equity. And your equity here would be what? So 54,000. So I'll remove na lang the 1,000 para mas mabilis. So 54,000 minus 34,000 plus 73 minus 41, you'll have your equity of 52,000. So now, it's a simple accounting equation na. So, missing yung liability natin. Alam natin si assets and equity. So, to finish this, basically, what we do is 92,000 minus 52,000. So, you have 40,000 in terms of the missing liabilities. Right? So, basically, ganun lang yung framework natin for questions like this. So now, maybe I need help. Lawrence, baka you can help us in terms of the Barbie and the Ken example. Good
Yes,
morning.
Morning po.
Sige. So step one would be, how do we get our equity for this one?
This is Tapos Barbie.
Ay, sorry. Go.
And so, sir, for sa Barbie po, to get yung equity po, sir, you just add yung owner's capital, subtract owner's drawings, add the revenue, and then subtract the expense po.
Okay, correct. So that will give us 70,000, right? And
Yes po,
then,
sir.
what would be your assets for this?
So you add the 70,000 to the liabilities po. So you get 198,000.
Okay, good. So 78 plus, 70,000 plus 128, you'll get 198. Okay. And then ito. So this is the challenge now. So paano kung walang binigay na owner's capital? How would you attack this question, Lawrence? So may liabilities tayo na 2/3 raw of total assets. So ano yung paano natin to isosolve, Lawrence?
So you just get yung liabilities by multiplying the assets to 2/3.
So parang basically assets kasi is comprised of liabilities and equity. So ibig sabihin, if 2/3 si liability, ano si equity? Ano yung missing niya?
1/3 po, sir.
1/3. Correct. So with that, i-multiply lang natin si assets by 2/3, which would be, so technically that's divide mo by 3 times 2 is 600,000. And then yung equity would be 300,000, which is basically divided by 3, right? So, and then to double check, we add 600 plus 300 is equal to 900. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for that one. So basically, yun lang naman, the way we solve for our assets and liability in terms of like the expanded equation. So, now the next step is, okay, we're done na with the fill in the blanks, right? So basically very intuitive. These would be the skills that you'll be using in terms of like mga long problems, right? So now, medyo hahaba na yung mga problems natin with the start of the financial statement creation. So first step kasi, so 2 parts lang naman yan eh. To get perfect, you need to understand the transactions well. And then second, you have to be good at creating your financial statements. So let's talk about preparing financial statements. So in terms of like the Macy Consulting, so I hope you're able to read or to watch the recorded lecture. So added bonus for the Macy Consulting. So there, I already talked about like the different financial statements. But now, to just really parang hone in terms of like the understanding, I want you to think about our introductory lesson. So basically parang when we were trying to get to know each other, we first talked about ano ba yung past nyo, ano ba yung present nyo, and then ultimately parang how is your past and your present helping create your ideal future, right? So parang ganun yung parang insight natin in terms of like in that introductory lesson. So similarly to that, companies create financial statements so that you get the full story, right? So you have your income statement, your balance sheet, your changes in equity, your cash flows, and your notes. All of them look intimidating, particularly for the ones that are not into accounting. But honestly, they're all interconnected, and simply they're only providing you is the story of two things. The story of a company's financial position, and its performance. So what do we mean by financial position and performance? So basically, financial performance pertain to income statement. So please, let's memorize this and really understand. If it's financial performance, that's income statement. So basically, it's a story of its transactions. So for a period, for a whole period, what are your revenues? What are your expenses? So performance in the sense is, paano ka ba nag-generate ng revenues? Ano ba yung mga na-incur mong expenses? And then at the end, you'll be able to determine, is it a good performance, meaning good net income, or is it a bad performance, net loss? So that's your financial performance. So it's more of your day-to-day operations. It's a story of your transactions. On the other hand, you have your financial position. So this one is a snapshot of the company's financial state at a certain date. Meaning, pare, it's September 20. Ano ang state of your assets? Ilan yung assets mo? Ilan yung liabilities mo? Ano yung equity mo? That is what the balance sheet refers to. So again, if it's financial performance, it's income statement. If it's financial position, it's balance sheet. And then, because of this, you'll be able to overcome one of the most common mistakes in coming up with the financial statements. Naalala ko, my first quiz in 99 was create a income statement or like a et cetera, et cetera. And then, nahirapan ako. I was like, yung sa third row, after the heading and also the title, is it for the year ended or as of, right? So, basically, how it helped me was that, okay, income statement is a performance throughout a period. Meaning, ang dapat title is for the period ending. Versus, since snapshot yung balance sheet, kailangan it's as of a certain specific date, right? So to help with this, let me begin with or let me end this subject in terms of a metaphor, right? So for me, one of the things I watch in YouTube is basically I got hit by this documentary called about Alex Honnold. So basically he climbs mountains and then parang he does it without ropes. So parang a free climb siya. So for me, a balance sheet is basically a snapshot in time. So meaning, you have your beginning or your point A, so basically nasa base siya of the mountain. And then you have point B, nasa taas na siya ng mountain, right? So financial position. So if it's balance sheet, it's an as of, it's snapshots in time. You have your beginning, so nasa baba pa siya. You have your ending, nasa taas na siya. So you'll be able to derive na, okay, kung point A niya, point B niya, then something must have happened in the middle in order for him to be able to climb or to be able to reach that destination. So basically, again, the point lang of this slide is the balance sheets are snapshots in time and therefore kailangan as of siya. Well, meanwhile, income statement is how he climbed, right? So if balance sheets are snapshots in time, then the income statement is the story in between periods. Paano siya nakaakyat? Paano yung performance niya, right? Throughout the whole period. That's why again, balance sheets are snapshots in time. So as of pag-balance sheet, income statement is for the period ending because it covers the performance. So basically video siya. Or basically it's a documentary in terms of how you're able to reach from point A to point B. So basically, parang again, you can think of it as parang a tree. So beginning mo is like you're a sapling and then at the end, meron puno ka na, right? So balance sheets will tell you in point A or as of period 1 end, ganito lang yung state niya. And then fast forward to period 2, after 1 year, nagkaroon ka ng point B, lumaki na siya. So balance sheets will be the one to tell you that. How did it grow? Parang what drove its growth? So basically, ang nakita natin is the liability stayed the same, but for some reason, the assets grew from 100 to 1,000 and the equity grew from 50 to 950. Paano tumaas yung equity? Paano tumaas yung assets? Well, we look at your income statement. So the income statement talks about how it grew or yung performance niya. Right? So apparently, nagkaroon siya ng revenues of 2,000, expenses of 1,100. So yung net income niya is 900. And as we've said, 900 equity is an addition to your equity. Net income is an addition to your equity. So yung equity niya of 50 plus 900 naging 950. Kaya tumaas ng 1,000 yung assets niya. Right? So how do we go about solving this? Or how do we apply this concept? Right? So we first go to the first level of accounting equations, right? So basic transaction analysis first. You apply it to an advanced transaction analysis and then gagawa na tayo ng mga income statements. So we've had this in terms of Macy. So gumawa tayo ng basic transaction analysis. Then gumawa tayo ng advanced transaction analysis, meaning we expanded the accounting equation. Ano ba yung specific accounts that were affected? And then also what would be the monetary units for each of the economic events, with the major goal of getting a subtotal for each of our accounting items. And then finally, kinuha lang natin yung income statements from this. And then from here, yung equity, and then finally, yung financial position. Right. So let's apply this in terms of the 1.12 or Unfair Games Inc. So dito, wala tayong pinapasolve. It's more of, I want you to first understand paano ba tayo gagawa ng income statement. Right? So I'll walk you through this exercise so that we can work together to answer the major problem later, which is a bullish launch agency. Right? So the first thing that you have to do is, okay, kung pinapagawa ka ng income statement, the first step or step 0 is, what is the format? So income statement, ano format natin? First, we start with our 3 headers. So ano yung 3 headers? Number 1 would be the name of the company, Unfair Games Inc. Number 2, ano ba yung title? Income statement. And then, it's all about financial performance. So dapat, it's for the year ended December 31, 2022. Now, we then look into ano ba yung major components of an income statement. Tatlo lang naman yan. Get your total revenues, so revenues, get your total expenses, and then finally, net income and net loss. So step 1, revenues. So titingnan natin yung given, and then we look for ano ba yung mga revenues. And honestly, isa lang naman yung revenues dito. The service revenue of 94,200. So now, we can confidently say that ito yung total revenues natin. Next would be expenses. Now, please remember na for expenses, let's order it by how big the expense would be. So first, marami tayong expenses, right? Parang 4. But out of those, we'll start with salaries and wages expense, because that's the biggest, 29,400. Rent expense of 18,300. Then we have utilities expense of 7,380. And then 5,120. And then, the next step is, ano yung total expenses natin? So, we get a calculator and then we add 29,400 plus 1830 plus 7,380 plus 5,120 is 60,200. And then finally, how do we get our net income and net loss? We just basically subtract 94,200 total revenues minus total expenses equals 34,000. So net income, net loss natin is 34,000 net income. Why net income? Because mas mataas si revenue. So this is our income statement. Now, how do we get our changes in equity? Again, step 1, format. Or step 0, ano yung format? Ang format ng equity is name of company, name of the statement, and then finally, for the year ended. So pareho lang si income statement and changes in owner's equity. Performance siya. So may beginning, may end. Therefore, ito yung kailangan natin i-track. So for the year ended, December 31. Ano yung 4 major components? Kailangan beginning capital, ano yung mga additions, ano yung mga subtractions or less, and then ano yung ending capital. So, hahanap lang tayo. So, beginning capital raw is 400,000. What are the additions? Wala siyang additional investments, but a net income is an addition. So, let's be careful. Pag net loss, kailangan nasa baba siya, right? But since net income naman siya, our total additions is tumaas si equity ng 34,000. Ano yung mga nagpapababa kay equity? Drawings. Right? So, 14,000. Meron pa bang ibang nagpapababa? Wala na. Therefore, 14,000. So, ang total is 420,000. How did I get 420? 400,000 plus the addition of a net income of 34,000 minus the drawings is equal to 420,000. So basically, this is what your income statement and changes in owner's equity. Pareho lang sila. For the year ending, and then, ito yung mga major components. Are there any questions? So we're done na. So last two examples na lang. 1.1 and 1.5. Are there any questions? If there are none, kindly thumbs up if everything's okay, and then we can proceed. Mayroong question. Trish. Yeah.
Hello po. To clarify lang, sir. For the parang title or header po for statement of changes in owner's equity, would that be the same po for statement of owner's equity lang?
Sorry, as in this one.
Yes po.
So basically, pareho siya nung third. For the third row. So for the year ending December 31, for the year ending December 31. Yeah.
Alright po, sir. But how about dun sa ano po, sir? Statement of changes, like the word po na changes. Because like I base it up sa book po, dun sa prob set ko. So, I just put like statement of owner's equity, para owner's equity statement, parang ganun po.
Okay. Actually, for the titles, parang mayroong mga different titles. I think okay naman yun kasi parang in essence, the keyword is equity. But in terms of like mga future, I think the official one would be changes in owner's equity. I think yun yung ginagamit. So ideally, let's use it. Pero if ever makalimutan nyo yun, ma-overlook. It's minimal. But I suggest na let's just standardize na ito yung mga names na we'll use. So for example, Trish, for financial position, it's technically statement of financial position. But at the same time, we can also accept like balance sheet, right? So I think good clarification na flexible naman siya in terms of like the titles. But my suggestion lang is standardize it na lang across para lang in future accountings may mga profs kasi na a bit particular about it. In this class, as long as gets ko naman na which statement you're referring to, it's okay. Ang keywords is owner's equity for equity and then income statement. Well, income statement. Yeah.
Alright, thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much, Trish, for the question. Okay. So if there are no other questions, let's now go to the parang technically the hardest out of all. So my assurance for you is if super na-gets nyo how to answer bullish launch agency, you'll be able to do well into parang anything that has to be related for chapter 1. But you really have to understand parang the underlying things that you need to be able to solve this, right? So with that said, baka what the first step is, paano natin isa-solve, right? So, okay, I think I'm guilty also of this. Again, when I see this type of question, medyo nag-shutdown na ako because it looks so difficult. Because mahaba lang, right? But honestly, parang if ever you get intimidated, you always go back to, ano ba yung tinatanong, right? So I ignore this part first during the exam, and then I go straight to the question. And the questions would be, kailangan lang natin ng advanced transaction analysis. So, kaya naman natin yun. There's a framework for that. And then for that, we have an income statement. And then gagawa lang tayo ng financial statement. So, two things lang pala yung gagawin ko. Advanced transaction analysis. And then the 3 financial statements. Right? So, how do we go about solving this? Through the level 1 accounting process. We can skip the basic transaction analysis kasi hindi natin siya kailangan. And we can go straight to advanced transaction analysis. And then, from there, please make sure tama yung advanced transaction analysis nyo because everything that you will use in order to create your 3 statements will come from this table. So, if nagtataka kayo bakit maraming mababa or parang either super taas ng mga tao or super baba sa accounting, it's because the mistakes pile up. Meaning, kung mali ka na sa advanced transaction analysis, kahit tama pa yung income statement mo and yung form, mali na lahat, right? So, if it's a key step, let's make sure na we double check kung tama, right? So, with that said, let's first do our advanced transaction analysis. So as a refresher for the rest, how do you make your advanced transaction analysis? Step 1, you start with the basic accounting equation. You have your assets on the left, and then you have your liabilities and your equity to the right. Number 2 is you then break it down into specific accounts. So dapat alam nyo kung paano i-categorize, right? Cash, receivable, supplies, equipment, all are assets. Liabilities, accounts payable, notes payable. And then equity, the easiest to remember is owner's capital minus owner's drawings plus revenue minus expense. So another thing is, pag increase, it's positive. Pag decrease, it's negative. Except owner's drawings and expenses. Pag owner's drawings and expenses, they're naturally negative. Right? So naturally negative sila owner's drawings and the expenses. So with that said, let's do per economic event and let's determine saan yung mga accounts that are affected. For this, baka we can break it down into mga siguro 4 transactions each para hindi naman parang kawawa the one who will recite. So let's start. Maybe Anton. Hi Anton, baka you can help us with the first 4 transactions. So let's analyze together.
Hi sir, good morning.
Yeah.
For the first one po, cash 435,000 and then owner's capital for 435,000.
Okay, kasi it's an additional investment. Okay, so second transaction is nag-procure raw sila ng 2 office laptops. So what would that be?
Sir, since dalawang laptop, so times 2 yung 60,000, so 120. So for cash, credit 120,000 and then ito sir,
Yeah.
naka-Excel, okay, kung hanap. Then debit 120 equipment.
So bumaba si cash and then tumaas si equipment, right? So basically minus 120 ng cash and then increase si equipment ng 120,000. And then super good point Anton na it's for each. So okay, second thing, ano dumadali sa mga students? Honestly, accounting is more of reading comprehension than anything else. So yan yung mga pinakaayaw na ayaw kong terminologies. For each. So always double check if it's for each or total. So different, sobrang mag-iiba yung answers nyo if it's total. So since each siya, it's 120,000. So pag may mga malabo sa exam, you ask us or you interpret in terms of the best. Okay, third, nag-rent raw siya ng office space and he paid already for the month at the end. So how would we go about this?
Sir, credit cash 80,000 and then debit 80,000 to expense.
Okay. So thank you so much, Anton. So for those who are new to accounting, I think he's just saying parang debit and credit. Pero simply, what that means is bumaba si cash of 80,000 and then nagkaroon ka ng expense of 80,000 also. So subtraction siya pareho. So nagbalance siya. 80 minus 80 minus 80. Right? Sige. And then finally, Anton, borrowed 450,000 from the local bank. What do we do with this?
Sir,
Ano yung mag-increase and decrease na components? Yeah.
cash po mag-i-increase ng 450 and then yung and then notes payable sir mag-increase din ng 450.
Okay, correct. So nag-increase yung cash mo and then nag-increase yung notes payable. Thank you so much, Anton. Sige. Thank you. So next for we can go Luther. What could be kindly help us with number 5. Yeah.
Number 5.
So nag-incur ka raw ng advertising cost of 78,000.
Sure, sir. Mag-increase po yung accounts payable to 78. Expenses naman po magdi-decrease ng 78,000.
Yeah. So nag-subtract tayo and then 78. So nag-balance pa rin siya. So nag-zero out on this side. Okay. And then good call because it says on account. So basically accounts payable siya kasi utang natin. Yeah. Number 6 is nag-perform ka raw ng services and then break down may na-receive ka raw na cash and then may balance. So how do we account for this? Later?
May increase po sa cash ng 250K. Sa accounts receivable po, 400K. And then sa revenue po, total of 650K.
Okay. So parang tumaas ito ng 650 on the left and then tumaas rin si revenue on the right. So balance pa rin tayo. Okay. 7. Nag-withdraw ka raw ng 21,000. Oo.
Decrease po si cash ng 21K. Tapos si owner's drawings po, minus 21K din.
Yeah, kasi nag-withdraw siya. And then finally, you spent 5,500 for office supplies. How would we go about it?
So minus po si cash ng 5,500 and then increase si supplies ng 5,500.
Okay. Sige. Thank you so much, Luther. And then lastly, to help us finish this, Vicky, can you help us with the last 4 items? Yeah. Morning. Or wala ka. Or si Margo na lang. Margo, are you here? Hi, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So, so 9 is you paid Facebook for the amount due in transaction number 5. So, anong gagawin natin here? So, 78, yeah.
Sir, minus cash of 38,000.
Okay.
And then, minus accounts payable of 38,000 then.
Okay, got it. So, kasi may utang ka, pero 38 out of the 78 utang, nabayaran mo na. So, bumaba si liability, pero at the same time, bumaba rin yung cash. Number 10. So, yung withdraw mo raw na 21,000, you bought a home standing desk.
No effect, sir.
Because it's a personal transaction. So, economic entry. Got it. And then, the 11 would be paid 7 employee salaries for a total of 405,000. How do we account for this?
Sir, minus cash of 405,000. And then expenses also minus 405,000.
Okay. And then finally, received 40,000 in cash from customers in relation to transaction number 6. So yung may 400,000 receivable ka raw, but 40,000 of those na-collect mo na. So how do we account for this?
Add 40,000 to cash, sir, and then minus 40,000 sa accounts receivable. Receivables.
Thanks so much, Margo. So basically, that ends our transaction analysis. So I know medyo tedious siya, pero this is your bread and butter in accounting. If you know how to interpret this, then you'll all do well in terms of like our exams and the questions. So now, ito na yung madaling part, pero tedious part. We just add everything, right? So basically, after you've done the transaction analysis horizontally, right? Vertically naman tayo. So let's get the subtotals. Right? So basically, if you add 435 minus 120 kasi nabawasan raw si cash for number 2 minus 80 plus 450 plus 250 minus 21 minus 5.5 minus 38 minus 405 plus 40. It's 505,500. And then, ito, 400 minus 40 is 360,000. And then, 5,500, 121,000. So, ang total is 991,000. So, now, okay. Sorry, okay lang, Vicky. Yeah. So, now, 991,000, we have, ang expectation natin is, if on the left side, 991,000, on the right, my liabilities would be equal, and plus equity would be equal to 991,000. So let's check equity. So 78 minus 38 is 40,000 and then 450. So my equity right now is 490, right? Kasi that's 450 plus 40. So dahil 490 to, regardless, kahit i-ignore ko tong apat na to, my expectation is that my equity is what? Right? So assets, so ito lang kasi yung simple accounting equation, right? So if assets is 991,000, liability is 490. What's your equity? 991 minus 490 is 501. So now, ang expectation ko is 501 dapat to. So let's just do the rest. Pag in-apply mo to, so how do we check kung 501 to? We check using the owner's capital, itong apat na components. So 435 minus 21 plus 650 plus 435 minus 21 plus 650 minus 560. Sorry. So for 435 minus 21. Okay, 414. Tama. Plus 650 minus 563 is 501. So now, we ask, nag-balance ba? 991 is equal to 490 plus 501. Nag-balance, right? So now, if ever, nagkamali kayo, parang hindi nag-balance sa 501, then you just have to double check each of the transactions just to make sure na pareho sila in terms of the check figures. So now that we're done, the next step is we format it in terms of your income statement, right? So for the income statement, basically, I'll just walk you through again para clear. So that clear. So step 1, income statement. Ano yung format? So step 1 ng format is title, Bullish Launch Agency, income statement. Pero unlike the previous example, it's just 1 month. So it's for the month ended September 30, 2022. What are the 3 major components of an income statement? Revenues, total expenses, compute natin si net income and net loss. Step 1, let's get total revenues. So ang total revenues natin is 650,000. Right? So 650,000. So lucky tayo, wala masyadong other items, puro service revenue lang, right? So 650,000. So if it's the same type of revenue, we just add them together. So service revenue 650,000. For expenses, iba-iba siya, right? And again, we have to add per liquidity, right? Or per kung gaano siya kataas. So ano yung pinakauna? If this is our expense column, we get salaries and wages expense is the highest at 405,000. Advertising expense is the next one at 80,000. And then 78,000 rent expense. When we add those 3 together, you have 563,000. Itong subtotal. So 650 minus 563 should be what? A net income of what? So net income is 650 minus 563 is 87,000. So 87,000. So again, step 1, total revenues. Step 2, total expenses. Step 3, net income. Bakit? So the next question is, bakit yung expenses organized siya or arranged siya by the level or by the sino yung highest number? It's because being world-class accountants, you have to, it's not important na you know how to make a statement. It's important for you to be able to read it. And ang common questions naman, ang common problems mo naman when you're running a business is, paano ko ba mapapataas yung profits ko, right? And you want na yung pinakamataas mong expenses would be yung yung una mong mababasa so that you know how to scale up or scale down your operations. So kung nakikita mo na, oh, 405,000 yung salaries ko, there are two interpretations for that. Either A, which is the parang masama way of doing it, cut their salaries so that tumaas yung profit mo. Or two, which is the better way, is that if I'm paying my employees 405,000 pesos, why is my revenues just 650,000? So is there a way that I can help upskill my workers at their current na I can generate more revenues with them? So that's the reason why arrange siya by highest expense all the way to the lowest expense, right? So that alam mo kung ano yung ika-cut down mo, ano yung parang what is the major driver in terms of ano ba yung kumakain ng revenues mo, etc., etc. Right? Yes, Margo. My question.
Sir, correction lang po or baka on my end lang. Pero, sir, yung rent expense is 80,000 based on your given.
Sorry. So, nagkabaliktad lang ba? Sorry.
Opo, like on my
Yeah.
paper. Okay.
So, yeah. Thank you so much, Margo. So, sorry, nagkabaliktad. But yes, so categories lang of the expenses. Yeah. So, yeah, let's just double check. Okay. So, I'll upload then this one with the Excel para lang that's the one that we follow. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Okay. That's good. That's a good sign. Thank you, Margo. Yeah. So next is changes in equity. So we're done with income statement. So if you're done with income statement, you can ignore already the revenues in the expense column. You can just look at your income statement. And then now we focus on the two columns, owner's capital and owner's drawings. So step 0 format. So alam na natin yan. Kaya na bahala in the 3 headers. I'm gonna focus on the meat. So apat lang yung hinahanap natin on owner's equity. Our beginning capital, our additions, our subtractions, and our ending capital. So let's determine our beginning capital. For this, you'll start to panic kasi wala kang makikita na beginning capital. But then you read in the given na kaka-start pa lang ng agency. Meaning, kapag nag-start pa lang yung company, your beginning capital is obviously wala. 0, right? So what are the things that affect it? Well, number 1 is nag-infuse raw siya ng 435,000. But ito yung mga palaging nakakalimutan ng mga tao. Kala ng mga tao, it's just owner's capital in terms of investments and owner's drawings that they should add. But you should also take into account your net income and your net loss. That would affect your equity. So now, looking at our income statement, may net income raw of 87,000. So that should be an addition. So 435 plus 87 is 522,000. And then our less is our drawings of 21,000. So 522,000 minus 21,000, that will give you your ending capital of 500,100. So how to check your ending capital? Dapat yung total of your equity should reflect your ending capital. Yung 501, 501. So now, the last step is, okay, alam na natin si equity. We can now look into our financial position or balance sheet. So, with that said, let's just look at the subtotals. So, I want you to look at the subtotals now for assets, for your liabilities, and for your equity. So, ano ba yung format ng financial position? So, ang format niya is name of company, statement of financial position, and then like what I mentioned, as of September 30, 2022. Next, ano yung mga major components? Assets and liabilities plus owner's equity. So you have your assets and then liabilities and owner's equity. So your left side and right side, pero basically ginawa na natin vertical format. And then under liabilities and owner's equity, syempre your liabilities portion and your owner's capital portion. So first is we list down assets by level of liquidity, meaning paano siya maging mas madali in terms of generating cash. So syempre, our most liquid would be cash. So cash of 505,000. 505,500. Next na pinaka-liquid is receivable, meaning if may utang sa'yo, madali mo lang gagawing pera. Kailangan mo lang makollect yung receivable. So receivable, accounts receivable of 360,000. And then supplies. So pare, may ballpen ka or meron kang stapler, mas madali ibenta ang stapler kaysa ibenta ang parang lupa or etc. because it's a bigger ticket item, right? So supplies of 5,500 and then finally equipment of 120,000. So earlier we were already able to prove that if you add all of this, it's 991,000. So my expectation here is my liabilities plus owner's capital should be equal to 991,000. So liabilities is just accounts payable 40,000, notes payable 450,000. So naging 490,000. Finally, for owner's capital, we're not going to include all of these four. We just look at our ending capital for our changes in equity. So ito, 501, 501. So total equity is 501. And then everything is happy because we were able to balance at 991,000. So with that said, 87,000. So ito yung basically the whole thing in terms of like the three statements. Things I want you to take note of. They're all interconnected. You start with your income statement. Yung income statement mo, if it's a net income, you plug it into the addition. Kaya siya color-coded, right? Pag net loss to, dapat nasa less siya. So under owner's drawing. So please be careful. Owner's capital, 501,000. So ang gagawin natin is, ipa-plug in naman natin siya sa financial position, right? So ganun lang yung interactions between the three. So now we're done with the comprehensive. The last is period analysis. So basically, it's the same thing as parang second exercise, pero mas complicated lang siya. Right? And how do we go about solving this? Okay. So, I think nagka-problem raw sa problem set for 360 sa OVLE. So, I'll reflect that change. So, I'll review those two changes that were mentioned and then we'll correct the... yeah. So, with that said, let's solve for this. So, it looks simple enough. Pero, I'll teach you how I go about solving these types of problems. And then, thank you so much for letting me know, Vicky, na you can only use chat. Sige. So baka you can help me with the air, earth, and fire nation later for this so that we can go through it together. Okay. So with that, let's start. So my tip for you is that if you encounter that problem, always just segment it into your rows, right? So ito mas visual way of looking at it. Basically, I segmented it na, okay, may beginning period tayo, wherein my assets, liabilities, and equity should balance with each other. Meron rin tayong ending period at December, so assets should equal to liabilities and equity at these two periods. So period 1 and period 2. And then, ano yung mag-change? Ang mag-change is yung equity natin. Right? Mag-change yung equity. So from 53,000, magiging siyang 63,000. So with that, I'll be able to determine na ano yung change niya. And then, I need to be able to balance naman the subcomponents of equity. So let's go about it. Right? So, first step. Period 1 muna tayo. The beginning. At a point in time. So, ang missing is liability. So this is simple. This is just basically what? 78 minus the 53 equity will give you 25,000 in liabilities. Next, ano yung missing assets in the ending of December 2022? Basically, it's just 24,000 liabilities plus 63,000 equity is 87,000. So complete na tayo for this. Now, the question is, ano yung change in equity? Well, you started off with 53,000. At the end, naging 63,000. So that would be an increase, right? So end equity 63 minus beginning equity of 53, you increase at 10,000. So itong change in increase of 10,000, what drove that 10,000? Well, it's a combination of 4 factors. May additions of 9,600, may subtraction of 4,100 owner's drawings, may plus na 18,000 revenue, and then may expense na missing. So, ang kailangan ko lang gawin is X yung expense, and then I have to equate it to 10,000. So, for me, the most practical way of going about it is 9,600 minus 4,100 plus 18,000. So currently, ang change ko raw is 23,500 without the expense. So, paano ko gagawing 10,000 yung 23,500? Well, basically, you subtract 10,000 from this, and you'll be able to get 13,500 na expense. There. So, we can go to the next activity. So I'll explain it again, and then we can just finish it. So basically, assets plus liability. So period 1, period 2, let's track the change in equity, and then let's analyze the subcomponents. Step 1, what are the missing figures for each of the snapshots or the periods, right? So ano yung missing equity at D? It's 870, 870, 870, sorry. $870 minus 356 is 514,000. And then assets, ano yung missing? So basically, how do we solve for this? It's gonna be 512 plus 689,000 is 1,201,000. So now, what's the change? If my beginning equity is 514,000, naging 689,000, that would be an increase or decrease? That would be a decrease, an increase. So 689,000 minus 514 is 175,000. Yun yung change ko. So now, all of this, the sum of this should equal 175,000. So how do we get that? How do we get the missing owner's capital? So we start with drawings. So minus 24,000 plus 47,000 of revenue minus 19,000 is 4,000. How do I get 175,000 with 4,000? So probably I need to 175 minus 4, 171,000, right? There. So last two, so Vicky, kindly type na lang natin yung answers for this one. So for this, let's first solve for liabilities. What would be your liabilities? Yeah. Kindly write it in the chat box now. Yeah. Okay. So for the liabilities, ayan, correct. Thanks, Vicky. So for 49,000, because 82,000 minus equity of 33,000 is equal to 49,000. Yeah, correct. Next, what would be our equity? So may missing tayong equity. So that's 133,000 assets, and then liabilities of 100,000. What would be our equity for this one? So okay, 33,000, correct. So we have 33,000, right? And then, lastly, ano yung change? If ang equity natin is 33 at beginning and then ending is 33, what would be our change in equity? 0, correct. So wala. So meaning, owner's capital minus owner's drawings plus revenue minus expense should all equal to 0. So with that, ano yung owner's drawings natin, Vicky? So I'll help you compute right now. So 98 na owner's capital plus 150,500 na revenue minus 40,300 is 120,000. So meaning, in order to make this 0, ang owner's drawing natin should be equal to 120,000. Correct. So 120,000. So 120,000. Yun. Final question will be this one. So since may one more item, we summarize na lang everything, right? So assets again, how do you get assets? So 60 plus 49,000 would be 109,000. And then assets minus equity will get your liability, which is 222,000 is equal to 29,000. And then what would be our equity change? So at the beginning, it's 49,000, naging 29,000. So that would be a decrease, right? So decrease yan. Kasi 29, the ending capital, minus 49, beginning capital. You have 20,000. So now it's what? How do we get negative 20,000? Or how do we get the missing revenue? Let's add. So 50 owner's capital minus 41 owner's drawings minus 385 is negative 376. So how much should my revenue be? Basically, it's 356,000 because negative 20 minus 376, negative 20 minus 376 minus negative 376 is equal to 356,000. There. So with that said, ito lang rin naman yung mga answers for the 1.5. So now we're done in terms of the exercises. So two things to note. So more of admin matters and then parang another reminder. So admin matter number 1 would be we have face-to-face classes tomorrow on Friday. So for Friday, it's concept lecture for number 2 for PS2. So please bring your handwritten so that I could use that as reference in terms of like yung grading, so I can actually help you in terms of like ano. So please bring in your handwritten solutions for your homework to count. If meron kayong mga things na you weren't able to answer properly based on our discussion, then you can rewrite the right answers based on our discussion and then you can submit it to me. So that will only happen if meron kayong problems with the check figures, right? Second, to avoid to just maximize our time. So I really want to use our 1 hour 30 minutes. Pero since back-to-back yung classrooms, I was advised na maybe we can start 15 minutes earlier. So on Friday, we'll start at 8:15 and then end at mga before, so 9:45. So yun yung 15-minute period natin. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yun. So basically yun yung gagamitin natin. And then don't worry, because of this adjustment, we'll record naman. So we'll record the concept lecture also so that you can look back on it in terms of your own pace. My last step would be on an extra exercise. So for me, if you did well on problem set 1, super good job. Pero please master this kasi aside from mastery, time pressure yung kalaban nyo. So please do Weygantt exercises. It's very helpful. If not, so it's very helpful. My suggestion is to save time and you work better in terms of a solution-based problem. Check your Weygantt, look for a problem na hindi nyo alam, then look for the answer key for that particular answer, and then analyze how they solved it, right? So here, I got a 114 from Weygantt na iba. Parang if ito yung lumabas sa exam, baka parang same concepts, very different answer. So for this, the reason why I wanted to highlight this is a Sudoku question type. Meaning, why do I call it a Sudoku question type? Lilituhin ka niya. Kanina, sa mga exercises natin, very chronological tayo. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Sa Sudoku, they assume na alam mo yung whole process. So ang gagawin nila, ibibigay nila sa yung 5th step, ibibigay nila sa yung 3rd step, ibibigay nila yung 1st step. And then ikaw bahala to figure out how do you get the 2nd step or the 4th step. So with this, I feel like this is a good way of looking at it. So first is, basically, ina-ask tayo, how do we make our balance sheet, right? So here, what I did was first, I looked into the revenues, right? So yung revenues niya, kahit na hindi siya importante, I wanted to take note of all of this, right? All of the given. So 140 and 65. So 140 plus 65 is 205,000. And then yung expenses niya is 150,000. So that's basically 150,000. 105,000, 150,000 expenses. And then 55,000 yung profit or loss because 205,000 minus 150 is 55. So honestly, hindi pa to important now, but wanted to get out or analyze each of the components that were given. So now we have assets, so yung cash, and then supplies of on hand. And then ito na yung matataranta kayo because never pa tayong naka-encounter ng assets and liabilities na dalawa yung valuation of the equipment. 105,000 and 140,000. So now, if you're not familiar with this type of exercise, you'll panic. Ano yung isusulat ko? Right? Is it 140 or 105,500? If you go back to our theoretical part of concept framework, you know na may two ways. We value at historical cost and we value at fair value. For equipment, we should always value it at historical cost, sans other advanced topics. So historical cost siya. Kasi unfair naman, right? Like, parang bakit pa iba-iba yung equipment mo, right? So how much did you buy it? So now, instead of fair value of the equipment, original yung gagamitin natin. We ignore this. Then, smooth sailing naman tayo. Liabilities is just 60,000. And then owner's capital, hindi binigay. So now, paano natin kukunin yung owner's capital here? By analyzing na, 146,000 yung assets. The total liabilities plus equity is 146,000. So meaning my owner's capital should be 86,000 because yun yung equity component ko. Right? So 146 minus total liabilities of 60 is 86,000. So, skinwheeze natin, inipit natin. So, alam natin yung total liabilities plus equity. Alam natin si liability. So, we'll be able to solve for equity. So, now, what if the question is, what is the beginning capital? And then, binigyan kayo ng dalawang additional information. Right? So, paano yan? So, alam natin yung format. So, ano raw yung beginning capital? So, paano natin isi-solve yun? Alam natin na an addition would be 9,179 in investments. Right? So, 9,179 given yun na investments. Then, next is, where do we categorize our net income or net loss? Right now, we have a net income or a profit of 55,000. So, we include this in 55,000 in addition. So, now we have an addition of 64,179. This is the sum of these two. And then, we less the drawings of 19,275, right? Now, coming in from the first question, alam natin na yung ending capital is 86,000. So, how do we get the beginning capital, right? Of 41,096. Basically, I start with a master formula na beginning owner's capital plus investments or additions plus net income minus owner's drawings is equal to our ending capital. So, lalaroin natin now. So beginning OC is equal to 86,000, which is our ending capital, right? Plus owner's drawings of 19,275 minus the investments of 55,000 and the net income of 9,971. Which will give us that the beginning OC is 41,096. So, for me, by doing more exercises, you'll be able to, pag lumabas to, parang okay, ganun pala isolve pag missing si beginning capital tapos iba yung provided. But even if hindi nyo ginagawa yung exercises, don't panic, or parang if it's new, you just look for our mga principles, right? How do you solve for ending capital, and then you just math your way into it. So that formally ends our first ever exercise breakdown. Before I officially end the recording, just wanted to ask if we have any questions or clarification. So mga may utang ako. Number one, sorry again, I think nagkamali yung slides now in terms of like the end, the bare LTD. So I'll have to redo that and send you the answer key. So for this, please refer to the answer key in the Excel that I'll provide. Number two, may mga corrections. Don't worry, for mga ganun, if ever you encounter that again, flag in the Facebook group. And then, second, parang answer it lang. Kung tumama naman yung other items, then it's most likely a common error. If may mistake sa answer key, I'll give that as bonus for the people. Number three, for those that did badly in terms of like the check figures, chance nyo bumawi by giving me handwritten solutions. So this is all for everyone. So everyone give me handwritten solutions. You can rewrite it now based on our discussion. And then I will give the soft copy of the student profile sheet. Yeah. To those that still need it. So that's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Kindly thumbs up if everything's okay. And then I'll see you on Friday at 8:15. So again lang natin ng 15 minutes. I'll record that as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate also for you answering the problems. Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day.
you, sir.
Thank you
Thank you,
po.
sir.